Chosen one. You were supposed to give up by now, but you didn't. You were never expected to make it this far. The odds weren't just against you, they were designed to break you. Life wasn't just hard, it was structured to exhaust you, isolate you, silence you, and ultimately make you believe that surrender was your only option. They watched as the storms piled up around you, expecting each one to be the final wave that would finally pull you under. But somehow, some way, you're still here. You're breathing. You're rising. You're not done. You were supposed to be erased by the chaos. You were supposed to drown in the noise of doubt, confusion, and delay. Every closed door, every betrayal, every loss, each of them was crafted like bricks meant to build your personal prison. But instead, you turned those bricks into a foundation. You've stood where others have fallen. You've endured what many could not. You were supposed to give up, but instead, you grew stronger. This video is a celebration of that unshakable spirit. Watch it to the end, and if you feel that shift stirring in your soul, comment your warmest wishes and the number 99. Let's energize the universe together and declare this moment as one of destiny. You didn't break because breaking was never your truth. Pain tried to speak over your purpose, but purpose can't be silenced. It may go quiet for a time. It may hide beneath the weight of suffering, but it never disappears. Deep inside you, it kept whispering, even when no one else believed in you. It reminded you of the calling, the reason, the divine appointment that never left your side. That whisper was louder than the noise of fear. That whisper kept you going. There were nights when no one knew you were on the edge. Days where your smile was armor, not joy. You kept walking, even when the road disappeared beneath your feet. You kept showing up, even when the room grew cold. You stayed alive inside, when everything around you felt dead. That's not weakness, that's power. That's not luck, that's alignment. You weren't just surviving, you were being recalibrated. You see, you weren't meant to break. You were meant to rise after bending. You were meant to endure the impossible, so you could teach others how to do the same. That's why the weight didn't destroy you. That's why the pressure didn't crush you. You were being refined in fire, not consumed by it. And now, you carry that fire with you. The people who underestimated you, the ones who stopped checking in, who stopped supporting you, who assumed your silence meant surrender, they don't understand who you are. They never did. They saw the surface, but not the spirit. They saw setbacks, but not strength. You were never for their approval. You were designed for something they couldn't see. Something bigger. Something sacred. It wasn't that you didn't feel like giving up. You just chose not to. That choice matters. That choice changed everything. It's easy to keep going when things are working, but it's divine to keep going when everything is falling apart. That's what sets you apart. That's what makes you chosen. You don't need validation. You don't need permission. The path that's opening up for you now is not one built on applause. It's built on alignment. It's the reward of silent endurance, the fruit of invisible labor. While they slept, you were planting seeds in the dark, and now the sun is rising over your soil. Everything that was delayed is being summoned. Everything that was blocked is being cleared. You were supposed to give up, but you didn't, and that decision is now echoing into places you've never seen. People you've never met will benefit from your choice to stay. Generations are shifting because you didn't quit. Your name is being written into rooms you haven't even walked into yet. Why? Because you remained. You remained loyal to your purpose, loyal to your truth, loyal to the unseen calling pulling you forward. Every silent tear, every lonely moment, every invisible battle. They were not in vain. You carried the weight so gracefully that even the universe took notice. And now, it is responding. Not because of luck, not because of coincidence, but because you refused to be defeated by what was sent to destroy you. You never needed them to understand you. You only needed to understand yourself. And now, that understanding is becoming power. That clarity is becoming direction. That strength is becoming influence. You are stepping into a version of yourself that only pain could unlock. And let's be honest, there were moments when you were so close to quitting, your soul felt like it was splitting. But somewhere, in the quiet, in the stillness, you heard something. Maybe not with your ears, but your spirit heard it. A sound, a knowing, a message. You're not done yet. And so, you took another breath, and then another, until here you are, not broken, built. The people who abandoned you during your construction phase won't recognize the final form. They'll ask where you got this strength. They'll ask when things started shifting. But they won't understand that the shift didn't happen overnight. It happened over every night that you stayed up fighting, every morning that you got up without motivation, every hour you kept your heart open, even when it was bleeding. You didn't need a crowd to keep going. You didn't need noise. You needed truth. You needed faith. And now you're walking in the evidence of both. They wanted you to fold, to fall apart quietly so they could say, "I knew it." But instead, you flipped the script. You walked through the fire. And you didn't just survive, you were transformed. And now, everything is aligning. Not just because of time, but because of your consistency. Not just because of timing, but because of your endurance. Not just because it's your season, but because you built this season with your faith, your fire, and your refusal to give up. This is not the end of your story. It's the expansion of it. The new chapter that begins where others would have ended. And the beautiful part is this: no one can take credit for your breakthrough, but you and the divine hand guiding you. They can't say they built you, because they left, they doubted, they laughed. But now, the silence is turning to sound. The shadows are making way for light. The background is becoming center stage, because you didn't give up. You've carried the weight of disappointment like armor, not because you wanted to, because you had to. You became your own hero in a world that hoped you'd need rescuing. You learned to navigate in the dark, to find your footing when everything beneath you crumbled. People looked at your silence and mistook it for weakness. They never realized you were in the middle of divine transformation. What they thought was your breaking point was actually your birthplace. You see, endurance is not glamorous. It's raw. It's gritty. It happens in rooms with no cameras and no audience. It happens when your hands are shaking, but you still keep building. When your knees buckle, but you still stand. When your voice trembles, but you still speak your truth. That's what makes you chosen. Not perfection, not ease, but the decision to keep going when giving up felt easier. They don't know about the nights when your faith was held together by a thread, when your hope felt like it was running on empty, when you questioned everything, including yourself, but you still showed up. You still answered the call. You still walked into the unknown without a guarantee of what was waiting on the other side. The truth is, some of your greatest victories happened in silence. No claps, no cheers, no awards. Just you versus every voice that said you couldn't. And now, the echo of your perseverance is waking things up. Things that were sleeping, doors that were sealed shut, paths that were hidden. They're unlocking. Not because they suddenly like you, but because the universe cannot ignore power anymore, and that's what you are now. Power in motion. Your scars tell a story they'll never understand, because they weren't there. They didn't see you dig your way out. They didn't witness the battles you fought just to feel whole. They see the smile now, but not the tears that sculpted it. They hear your strength, but not the silence that forged it. And that's okay, because you didn't do it for them. You did it for you, for your calling, for every part of you that refused to let life steal your fire. There's a reason you're still standing. And it's not just survival, it's purpose. You're not here by accident. You were not forgotten. You were hidden for a time. Hidden so you could be built, not broken. Hidden so you could develop depth, not just display. While others were chasing spotlight, you were chasing substance. And now, substance is what sets you apart. You weren't meant to just pass time. You were meant to shift it, to carry wisdom that can only come from being crushed and rebuilt. You were meant to be a living reminder that setbacks are setups in disguise. That pain has a purpose, that delays are divine. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are walking as one who knows they've been chosen all along. And that knowing is magnetic. That knowing opens doors no man can shut. That knowing draws in opportunities not based on your resume, but on your resilience. You outlasted what was meant to destroy you. That alone has redefined your path, because it means you're no longer moving from survival. You're moving from overflow. You're no longer hoping to be seen. You're aligned with being revealed. And this revealing, it's not about impressing others. It's about expressing everything you were created to become. Let them wonder how you're still here. Let them guess why the things that broke others couldn't break you. Let them ask how you did it. You don't need to explain. Your existence is the explanation. Your presence is the proof. The light in your eyes is a loud enough sermon, because it says, "I've been through hell, but I came back whole." You are a walking contradiction to everything they expected. You are proof that the low points are not the end. You are evidence that transformation is real, and that sometimes the people who are most doubted are the ones most destined. So let this moment be your declaration, not of revenge, not of ego, but of truth. A truth that says, "I'm not here because of ease. I'm here because of grace, because of grit, because I made it through." Your timeline doesn't have to match theirs. Your success doesn't need their blueprint. You are building something new, something fresh, something eternal. You're no longer who you were, and you're not yet who you will be, but you are more than enough in this moment. You've earned the right to walk tall, to breathe deeply, to celebrate quietly or loudly, however your spirit desires. Because this season, it's yours. This is what happens when chosen ones don't give up. The atmosphere begins to change. The narrative shifts. Life bows to your persistence. Heaven aligns with your heartbeat. And suddenly, all the things that once worked against you are now working for you. Not because it's easy, but because you didn't quit. They never expected you to be the one who made it. You didn't have the resources, the support, or the clarity. And yet, step by step, inch by inch, you built your strength in the shadows. You were underestimated because you didn't announce your process. You weren't loud. You weren't flashy. You were intentional, quiet, devoted to the long game, while others chased short-term applause. It's not that you didn't want to give up. It's that something in you wouldn't allow it, even when you begged for rest, even when the silence got too loud, even when your heart grew tired of trying. Something deeper kept you grounded. That something was your calling. And callings don't die in disappointment. they transform through it. You weren't born to be ordinary. You were born to endure what others couldn't, so you could lead in a way others wouldn't. That's why your process was different. That's why your story isn't clean. You didn't get a straight line. You got storms, deserts, detours. But now, every scar is becoming sacred. Every bruise is becoming beautiful. Every delay is becoming divine. You were walking through places that should have killed your hope, and instead, you came out with more vision. You were surrounded by people who didn't understand you, and instead of shrinking, you expanded. That expansion wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. You became bigger than your pain. You became wiser than your mistakes. You became clearer than the confusion sent to paralyze you. They'll say you changed, and they'll be right. But not because you lost yourself, because you finally found yourself. The pieces of you that had been buried beneath expectations, trauma, guilt, and comparison were finally uncovered. The version of you they see now, that's the real you. The untamed, unfiltered, unapologetic you. The version that had to be carved from suffering and brought to life by grace. Let's talk about the loneliness, because you felt it. Not the kind that comes from being alone in a room, but the kind that comes from being misunderstood in your soul. You were speaking a frequency most people couldn't hear, carrying energy most people couldn't match. You tried to lower your light just to belong, but it only made things darker for you. So eventually, you chose something braver, to stand alone rather than shrink in a crowd. And when you stood alone, something started to shift. The clarity you were chasing began to find you. The guidance you thought was gone returned in subtle ways, through intuition, through dreams, through moments that felt small but carried immense weight. You started to trust yourself again, to hear your own voice without the noise of others drowning it out. That's why you're rising now, not because the world gave you a green light, but because your soul did. Not because circumstances became perfect, but because your perspective did. You started to see pain as a messenger, not a punishment. You started to see trials as training, not trauma. That shift didn't come overnight. It came after 1,000 tiny battles that no one applauded. And that's what makes your journey sacred. People don't see what it cost you. They don't see the nights you cried yourself to sleep while still showing up the next day with a smile. They don't see the courage it took to forgive people who never apologized. They don't see the strength it took to move forward without closure. But you know, and the divine knows, and that's enough. You've become a master of silent victories. You've walked through fire and emerged with vision. You've sat with heartbreak and transformed it into healing. You've let go of people you once begged to stay. That's not weakness. That's divine detachment. That's evolution. That's elevation. And now, you're not just standing, you're glowing. Not with ego, but with peace. Not with pride, but with purpose. You're glowing because you know that everything you lost wasn't punishment, it was pruning. Everything that left wasn't rejection, it was redirection. Every delay wasn't denial, it was divine alignment. You're not waiting anymore. You're moving. You're not hoping for a chance, you're creating one. And in that shift, the universe is responding. People are being drawn to your frequency, not because you're begging, but because you're becoming. You are a magnet for miracles, not because of luck, but because of alignment. You're no longer just surviving, you're ascending. Every tear you shed is now watering your harvest. Every silent yes to keep going is now echoing into breakthroughs. You didn't give up, and now nothing can stop what's coming for you, because it's already written. It's already in motion. And the only thing that was ever required was that you didn't quit. And you didn't. You didn't realize it while it was happening, but your refusal to give up was rewriting your entire reality. The moment you decided to stay in the fight, no matter how tired, confused, or unsupported you felt, you triggered a shift in the unseen. You changed timelines. You interrupted generational cycles. You declared to the universe that you would not be shaped by circumstances, but by choice. And choice is everything. You chose to stay soft in a world that hardened others. You chose to keep your heart open in a time when shutting down would have been easier. You chose to keep dreaming when everything around you screamed for you to settle. And that choice, again and again, is what separated you from those who watched and waited for you to collapse. You didn't collapse. You recalibrated. Let's be real. There were times when quitting looked like the only logical option. You were running on empty. Prayers felt unanswered. Support was nowhere to be found. You were screaming inside, yet smiling on the outside. And while everyone else thought you were fine, you were fighting battles they couldn't begin to comprehend. But you kept going. You kept going because your soul remembered something your mind forgot. Your purpose is bigger than your pain. Your vision is deeper than your valley. You weren't built for temporary applause. You were designed for eternal impact. You've become the kind of person who can walk into chaos and carry peace. Not because you were born with it, but because you earned it. You cultivated peace through pain. You carved wisdom through wounds. You developed clarity through confusion. You didn't wait for the light. You became it. And now, the old version of you is unrecognizable. The version that doubted, that apologized for existing, that waited for validation, that begged to be chosen. That version is gone. Not because you hated them, but because you outgrew them. You evolved. You stepped into your becoming. You realized that being chosen doesn't mean being celebrated. It means being tested. And tested you were. But you passed every test that tried to strip you of your identity. Every moment that came to steal your voice, your vision, your strength. You faced it. You didn't always feel victorious. But the point wasn't perfection, it was persistence. And that persistence is what built the version of you we see now. Solid, rooted, expansive, unshakable. You don't flinch the way you used to. The same attacks that would have shattered you in the past now bounce off of you like rain. You're not moved by noise anymore. You're not swayed by opinions. You've seen too much. You've healed too deeply. You've experienced the transformation that comes not from escaping the fire, but from walking through it. And that's what makes you dangerous now, because you are no longer afraid of losing what was never meant for you. You are no longer pretending to fit where your soul doesn't belong. You've stopped shrinking. You've stopped explaining. You've stopped overthinking every step. You trust yourself. You trust your timing. You trust your intuition. And that kind of inner stability is rare. You know the difference now between what feeds you and what drains you, between what's real and what's performative, between what's sacred and what's superficial. You've tuned your life to a higher frequency, and anything that doesn't match that frequency, whether people, habits, or environments, is falling away. Not because you're judging it, but because you're no longer available for anything that disturbs your peace. You understand now that peace is not passive, it's powerful, and protecting your peace is not selfish, it's spiritual. Because you've seen what happens when you abandon yourself to please others. You've lived through the burnout, the betrayal, the emptiness of being everything for everyone and nothing for yourself. Not anymore. Now, your loyalty begins with you. Your energy is sacred. Your boundaries are strong. Your time is intentional. You no longer negotiate with confusion. You no longer entertain anything that requires you to beg for your worth. You walk in certainty, not because you have all the answers, but because you finally accepted that you are the answer. That's what people don't understand about the chosen ones. We're not born with everything handed to us. We're born with everything inside us. And it's only through pressure, through storms, through silence, that we learn how to unlock it. That unlocking is painful, but it's also prophetic. You didn't give up, and now the promise is becoming visible. Not just through material things, but through who you are becoming, through the peace in your spirit, the strength in your presence, the fire in your voice, the stillness in your gaze. You don't need to announce your power, it's felt. When you enter a room, the energy shifts, not because you're loud, but because you're aligned. This version of you, it was always waiting for the moment you'd stop dimming, waiting for you to stop denying the call, waiting for you to remember that you're not just here to survive, you're here to rise, to shift, to speak, to lead, to shine. And shine you will. You've already done the impossible. Now, you're walking proof that endurance is transformation in disguise. They thought you staying silent meant you were lost, but you weren't lost. You were listening. You weren't weak. You were witnessing the breaking down of everything false, watching as the old version of your life crumbled, making room for something real. You didn't speak because you were busy rebuilding from the inside out. No one claps for the inner work. No one throws parties when you decide to stop running and sit in your pain. When you choose healing instead of revenge. When you choose rest instead of hustle. But those are the choices that change your destiny. That's the path of the chosen one. Quiet, slow, sacred. You knew there was something greater ahead of you, but no one else saw it. You were mocked for being too sensitive, too intense, too much. But your depth is what saved you. While others were numbing, you were processing. While they were escaping, you were excavating. You reached into the roots of your soul and pulled out everything that no longer belonged. The bitterness, the self-doubt, the illusions of who you thought you had to be. And what's left now is truth, unfiltered, undeniable. There is a stillness in you now that wasn't there before. You're not chasing anything, you're attracting. You're not begging, you're choosing. You've crossed the invisible threshold that most people fear. The moment when your survival mode turns into creation mode. When life stops being a battle and starts becoming a canvas. You're painting your own masterpiece now, and it doesn't have to be understood by those who only see the frame. You've outgrown explanations. You've outgrown needing to prove your worth. You've stopped waiting for someone to crown you because you realized you've already been crowned by the fire that didn't burn you. You've been anointed by the nights that tried to break you. You've been chosen by the very path that tried to crush you. You weren't supposed to make it, but you did. And now you carry wisdom that can't be taught in books, a frequency that can't be duplicated, a presence that can't be ignored. Not because you're trying to be anything, but because you finally stopped pretending. This is what rising looks like. It's not loud. It's not chaotic. It's steady. It's quiet. It's sacred. It's in how you walk into rooms with peace. It's in how you no longer react to chaos. It's in the way your silence speaks louder than someone else's shouting. Because you've become a mountain. Still, strong, unmovable. People will come back into your life pretending they always believed in you, but you'll know who was really there. Not by what they said, but by how they showed up when you had nothing to offer but your presence. You'll know who deserves a seat at your table, not out of bitterness, but out of alignment. Because you don't owe everyone access anymore. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. This path you're on now is too important to carry dead weight. You've already carried more than most could handle. Now is the time for clarity, for boundaries, for choosing peace over people-pleasing, for protecting your energy like your life depends on it. Because it does. You're not cold, you're clear. You're not distant, you're discerning. You've learned how to love from a place of power, not desperation. How to give without depleting yourself. How to stay soft without being walked on. That balance, that's mastery. That's what happens when you don't give up. You become the version of yourself that was always waiting beneath the pain. The version that isn't afraid to speak, to shine, to walk away, to stand tall, and most importantly, to stay. You stayed when everything said leave. You stayed present when everything told you to check out. You stayed kind when bitterness would have been justified. You stayed loving when all you knew was loss. You stayed humble while you healed. You stayed grounded while you grew. And now the staying is turning into soaring. Because you didn't give up, you're stepping into seasons that were always meant for you. Opportunities that align with your worth, not your wounds. Relationships that pour into you as much as you pour out. Moments that feel like prophecy fulfilled. Not because of magic, but because of match. You are finally a match to what you prayed for. This moment you're living in now, it's just the beginning. Now that you're here, at the threshold of what once felt impossible, take a breath, a deep one. Because this isn't just another chapter. This is your confirmation. You didn't imagine your way through this. You earned your way here. You stayed loyal to your soul in a world that pressured you to betray it. And for that, the entire universe is moving to honor you. You don't have to look for signs anymore. You are the sign, the proof that grace covers those who don't quit, that faith bends reality, that inner work reshapes outer worlds. Every time you doubted yourself, but took a step anyway, that was a vote for your future. Every moment you chose healing over hiding, you were rewriting your fate. This isn't just a win. This is the reward for endurance. This is the crown for the nights you bled in silence. This is the divine echo of every whispered, "I can't," that you turned into, "I will." This is not payback. It's purpose, catching up with your persistence. Now, you don't owe the world your trauma. You owe it your truth. You don't have to prove that you were broken. Your strength already tells the story. You don't have to beg for space. You are the space. You don't have to convince anyone to see you. You were meant to be seen by those aligned with your future, not your past. And that's the key now. Don't look back. Don't return to places you had to pray your way out of. Don't shrink yourself to fit back into conversations you've spiritually outgrown. You're not better than anyone, but you are different. You've been set apart for something real. And the time for doubting that is over. You don't have to over-explain anymore. You don't have to convince them you're worthy. You don't have to justify your evolution. The path ahead is no longer about survival. It's about expansion. It's about taking up space, creating waves, lighting torches for those still lost in the dark you've already walked through. You are not just a survivor of your story. You are now the storyteller, and your story will be a lifeline. It will pull people out of the very pits you climbed from. Not because you saved them, but because your presence gives them permission to rise. You've become a mirror of what's possible when someone doesn't give up. when someone stays soft in the storm, when someone believes, even when it hurts. You were supposed to give up, but you didn't. You held the line. You weathered the silence. You walked alone. And now, the path is clear. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours. This is your reward, not just in things you can touch, but in the peace that you now carry. The peace that says, I'm no longer who I was, and I'm not afraid of who I'm becoming. The peace that anchors you when the world shakes. The peace that leads when logic fails. The peace that only comes when you know you are meant to rise. So now, walk forward, not with apology, but with authority. Speak boldly, love freely, rest often, protect your joy, honor your inner voice, and never again let fear dress itself up as reason. You've already proven what they never thought you could. You've already outlived the shame they tried to bury you in. You've already become the light that darkness hoped would go out. So shine, not for them, but for you, for who you were, for who you are, and for everything that's still unfolding. Because it's only just beginning. And now the world will see what happens when the chosen one doesn't give up. Take this moment, chosen one, and feel it fully. Not with your mind, but with your soul. You didn't just hear these words, you remembered them. Deep down, you already knew. You knew you weren't built to break. You knew you weren't cursed. You knew the chaos wasn't random. You knew something greater was guiding you, shaping you, preparing you. Every disappointment that felt like punishment was actually a detour from destruction. Every rejection that cut deep was protection from what your heart couldn't yet see. You weren't late. You weren't behind. You were being shielded, held, refined. This world didn't hand you a golden path, but it did give you fire, and you, miraculously, learned to carry it without burning yourself down. You learned to use the heat to forge something holy, something rare, something unbreakable. Your heart has been through wars that no one will ever fully understand. But here's the truth. Your heart didn't close. It expanded, even after everything. And that's the miracle. That's the part they don't teach. That's the part they can't fake. You still believe. You still love. You still hope. And that is your victory. This isn't just about winning. It's about awakening. You woke up to your worth. You woke up to your power. You stopped outsourcing your validation to people who didn't even see the real you. You stopped settling for crumbs when your soul was designed for feasts. You stopped lowering your voice when you were born to be heard. And now your life is aligning to that truth. You'll start seeing beauty where there used to be confusion. You'll start meeting people who don't drain you, but recognize you. You'll find yourself in moments that feel familiar, not because you've lived them before, but because your spirit has always known this was coming. It's what you were waiting for. It's what you were being prepared for. You don't need to hustle for what's meant for you. You don't have to scream to be heard by what was divinely assigned to you. You only need to stay open, stay grounded, stay you. This version of you, this elevated, unshaken, deeply connected version, is unstoppable. Because when a chosen one remembers, everything changes. The energy shifts. The room feels different. The timing syncs up. Opportunities appear, not because you forced them, but because you became the version of you that those blessings were always searching for. You're no longer in survival mode. You're in activation mode. So from here on out, every step is sacred. Every decision is intentional. Every boundary is holy. And every breath you take is a declaration, I'm still here, and I'm just getting started. Let that settle in your chest. Let that truth pulse through you. You didn't just make it, You made it through as you. And no amount of applause, validation, or external achievement will ever compare to the internal knowing that you refuse to give up on yourself. Because in the end, that's what this was always about. You remembering who you are. And now that you have, nothing will ever be the same again.